and welcome to the Warren Files. I'm your host, Chris McKinnell, and tonight we're going to have a very interesting program talking about aliens. I hope you enjoy it and have plenty of questions for me. You're going to have to excuse me, but I'm going to be referring to my outline because it's quite lengthy and there's a lot to go through today. The first thing I want to ask you is, are we alone in the universe? I know we've asked this before. That it's estimated that for every grain of sand on Earth, there is another Earth-like planet in the universe. That's mind-blowing. Think about that. How could there not be life out there? I've heard arguments about this and how, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean there's complicated life. It doesn't mean there's intelligent life. It doesn't mean it's survived long enough to communicate with the universe. I disagree with that. And we're going to examine some of that later on in the program. There are so many different aliens that are supposed to exist. For instance, there's the Pleiades, or they're now called the Plejarans. And these are kind of Nordic white aliens who have supposedly been here since ancient times. They retreated to underground. Some reports say that they have a green cast to their skin, and they're very tall. Then there's actually, the reptilians. They're supposed to be tall, reptile-like aliens who are vicious and harmful to us. The Greys, who are the most famous of all, they're kind of short and have big eyes. Everyone's heard of them. There's a terrific encounter called the Hopkinsville Goblin Encounter. It took place in 1955 in Kentucky. It was investigated because 5 adults and 7 children came to the police station and said that for the past 4 hours they'd been in a gun battle with little men who were staring at them through windows, and they were shooting at them. The people were shooting at these creatures. And so the police, a military base, and several others, people like the police, went there. And they found plenty of evidence of a gun battle. There were bullet holes everywhere and bullet casings everywhere, but there was no evidence of aliens. At 3:30 that morning, the family fled again because they had told neighbors that the creatures had come back. Now, this has been discounted by psychologists who say this is an example of hysteria, that it was only great horned owls, that they may have been drinking. But here's the thing. These were country people. This was Kentucky. They know what a great horned owl is. They're not going to freak out over a great horned owl. And I sincerely doubt that all 7 children were drinking. And that this would go on for 4 hours. Kind of ridiculous. So, unfortunately, what happens when there's such a mind-altering occurrence, people don't look for the explanation. They look for a way to debunk the occurrence and say, well, that's not what really happened. No, it could be. That's exactly what happened. No. Then we get into things like the Nephilim or the Anunnaki. Now, for me, I'm not a big follower of these things. The Nephilim are supposedly the angels who'd come to Earth and had children with human women, but were wiped out by the flood, and that these were actually aliens, and they were responsible for a great deal of our evolution and of our culture. I don't see that evidence myself. The Anunnaki are actually originally Assyrian, Hittite, Babylonian, Sumerian gods in their mythology. And then von Daniken, who wrote Chariots of the Gods and a number of other books, and another guy named Sitchin popularized the idea that the Anunnaki were not gods, but were ancient astronauts, and that they had used proto-human labor to dig up gold. That this was what they wanted, and Earth was rich with gold, and that they had done genetic modification to create our race to make better slaves. There's also the idea that these same aliens are responsible for things like the Great Pyramids and other extraordinary works of stonework throughout the ancient world. Yeah, I've been around the world. I've been to ancient Saqqara, where the original Egyptian pyramids are. And you can see the evolution of pyramid building there. There's no mystery as to how they were created. It wasn't aliens. This was human ingenuity. Human beings are capable of extraordinary feats. So not everything that is out there is actually alien. There's no reason to believe it is. Having said that, there is overwhelming evidence that we are being visited, and we have been visited for thousands and thousands of years. And we're going to get into a lot of that, and why it is that they are not prevalent and out in the open with us today. By the way, you are watching the Spirit Realm Network. Please like and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Please also go to the Warren Files YouTube channel and like and subscribe to that for us. I'd appreciate it. I do these so that we can get the word out as to who we are, the foundation, the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, and so that we can help more people. We're all over the world. We're there to help. But if you don't know it, we can't do anything about it. So thank you. So the thing that I wanted to get into first about the paranormal and that connection, and there'll be a couple of points we're going to make tonight about this. But back in the 80s and the 90s, there was a huge upsurge in reports of gray aliens and of alien abductions and being probed and all of this stuff. And it's kind of died down, and it wasn't all that prevalent beforehand. I believe, my belief is that just like anything else in the world with the paranormal, our beliefs shape the way the paranormal appears. I'm not saying grays don't exist. I believe they do, in some shape or another. But the overwhelming reports of these grays appearing and visiting and abducting people and so forth, that kind of fear, that kind of terror is right up the alley for these other entities that come to us and try to terrorize us because they're feeding off of us. So there's a good chance that a large percentage of them were not actually alien, but were actually manifestations either from our own thoughts or from something inhuman making it seem like a gray. Now, having said that, I don't know if you've ever heard of MUFON, but it is probably the number one UFO investigative organization in the United States. And they have between them and the government, they have over 3,000 sites that they have analyzed that have left physical evidence on the ground from alien visitations. And well more than that of alien contact. So There's a lot out there. If you do a little bit of digging, you'll be overwhelmed by the amount of evidence. There's so much evidence, it's impossible to believe that we're not being visited. But let's talk about some of the more historical things first. Let's get into that. Now, all the way back to our cave-dwelling ancestors, there are cave paintings of what appear to be astronauts and saucers flying through the sky. These people were very practical in what they drew. They drew what they saw. You know, they drew the bison and the mammoth and the antelope and things of that nature, and they drew themselves hunting. So where would they have possibly come up with something like that? That's pretty good evidence right there. There's, of course, the Nazca lines in Peru, which are of everything from birds to people and other shapes, but they're hundreds and hundreds of meters long, hundreds of yards long, and you can't get a sense of them from the ground. You've got to be in the air to really get a sense of what you're looking at. Why? That's pretty amazing stuff. There are carvings in Central America, in tombs, of what appears to be a king, I believe Aztec king, on a rocket ship. How? Why? You know, these are things you have to start to question this. They're all over the world. These kinds of strange carvings of what appear to be aliens. It's pretty cool, actually. There's another one I wanted to bring up to you because, to me, remember I said that the Pleiades aliens, or the Plagiarans, have been reported to have a green cast to their skin? The green children of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, in the 1100s. This was an amazing story. One day, 2 children were found in a wolf pit. That's where the name Woolpit comes from. And they were green. And they wore strange clothing. They wouldn't eat the food that was offered to them, and they were brought to a local lord. Now, if they had been Flemish or something like that, because there were Flemish people in the area, and they did speak a different language, they did wear different clothing. If they had been Flemish, that lord certainly would have recognized the language, even if he didn't speak it. But he didn't. Eventually, after a few days, the children discovered green broad beans, and they started eating those. It was the only thing they ate for quite a while, raw green broad beans. And just after they were baptized, the little boy, he was the younger of the 2 children, died. The girl did grow up. She served in that household until she married another man and left the area. They eventually did lose their green skin and become more of white complected. But were they Plagiarans? I'm not sure. Something to question anyway. There's also this terrific painting, and I always come back to this one because it doesn't make any sense if it wasn't aliens. There's a painting from medieval times of Mother Mary holding Jesus, and there's a window behind them, and you can see a spaceship in the painting. There's something going on there. And in 1798 until 1801 in England, there was the Copper Man. This was a being with what looked like metallic skin that was sighted several times by many people and then disappeared. It makes you wonder. Could that have been just a manifestation? I don't think so, because it was brand new to these people. It wasn't something that came from folklore. So it doesn't seem to me that that was paranormal. That seems more like a visitation. You know, this year, I believe it was in April, the United States government actually acknowledged the existence of UFOs. You might have missed it due to COVID and everything else that's been going on. But they did. They acknowledged it. They said, yeah, these things exist and we don't know what they are. As a matter of fact, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Gorbachev, Carter, Ford, Reagan, Prince Philip of England, and astronauts Gordon Cooper, Buzz Aldrin, and Edgar Mitchell all have talked about the existence of aliens. And Carter and I think Reagan, I know for a fact Carter, have both said they saw UFOs. Carter had gone to Bush Sr. when Bush was the head of the CIA. And he said he wanted to know about UFOs. And Bush said, no, you're not cleared to know. You're going to have to take that up with Congress. And if they clear it, then you'll get to hear about it. Really? Think about that. The President of the United States, the man that we think is in charge, doesn't have access to all of the relevant information that's necessary. And something like that, we're being visited by alien life. Clinton had also asked for that information. He was denied as well. He was told no, you can't have it. So that's scary, actually, to me. I wanted to get into Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla. This guy was, if you've never heard of him, he was a Serbian American. He'd come over from Serbia, Croatia, I believe, and he had, for a short time, worked with Edison. And he's the one that came up with the alternating current that we still use today. The man was phenomenal. Einstein thought of him as the most brilliant man in the world. And he had come up with these amazing inventions. He was working on a project with J. Pierpont Morgan, J.P. Morgan. And this was to create wireless energy transmission, something that we're now using all the time. And he was demonstrating it, and then out on, I believe, Long Island, he had created this huge tower, and then Morgan pulled out and didn't finish the project, unfortunately. He had reputedly been in communication with aliens, the Pleiades, from the Pleiades, and in 1934 he had arranged a meeting with Franklin Delano Roosevelt and these aliens. I don't know if that's true. It's something that's going out there that they had met in the Pacific on a ship, and that FDR had made an agreement for the aliens to be allowed certain resources, and that they would in turn give technology. And we did see a huge jump in our technological accomplishments from the 30s to the 40s. Now that could be explained by the necessity of World War II, easily. But it's something to think about. It's also interesting that this same meeting may have given the government access to technology that was responsible for the Philadelphia experiment. Now, if you've never heard of that, this is a pretty amazing thing. The ship was called the USS Eldridge. It was a brand new I'm going to say battleship, but it might be a destroyer. And they had outfitted it with these giant generators, and the experiment was supposed to make the ship invisible to enemy radar. Nikola Tesla was supposed to have been a part of this, but he was worried that it was going to be devastating and that it should be tried without people on the ship first. He was not listened to. And the same year that he died, 1943, they tested the ship. There was a greenish glow that surrounded the ship, and then it vanished in full sight of other ships. I mean, not vanished to radar, it literally was gone. And it showed up, I believe, at the Norfolk Naval Yards, and a couple of hours later, it was back in Philadelphia Harbor. Most of the crew was disoriented and damaged, and some of them were actually fused to the hull. Parts of their body were in the hull. If that's an example of alien technology, it's pretty devastating, and it shows that we don't really know what we're doing. At least back in the 40s we didn't. Currently, that same ship, the Eldridge, is owned by the Greek Navy, and it does a circuit between 3 islands in Greece. Excuse me a moment. Including Delphi, and I don't remember the other 2, but if you ask Catherine Sorilos on Monday on her program, she'll tell you all about it, because she actually had a sighting of the Greys on one of those islands. And it was an island with a military base. Well, I'll let her tell you about it. It's very, very interesting. Back to our friend Nikola Tesla. When he died, the United States government came in and scooped up all of his research. Took it all. 80 boxes. And eventually, after the war, back in the 50s, they gave 60 of the boxes to his heir, who was the ambassador to, I believe, Yugoslavia, Serbia? I'm not positive. But first, and this is kind of interesting, they gave it to a man named John Trump. Yes, that Trump. The uncle of Donald Trump, to look at all of the work and to evaluate it as to whether or not there was anything there that could be used for the war. Because supposedly there was a death ray. We know that the military has involved themselves in death ray experiments since then, so it is very likely that that came from Tesla. A lot of our current way of life comes from Tesla. I'm going to read you a quote. This quote is from Victor Marchetti, former special assistant to the executive director of the CIA. We have indeed been contacted, perhaps even visited, by extraterrestrial beings, and the United States government, in collusion with other national powers of the earth, is determined to keep this information from the general public. Here's another one. This is from the former CIA director, Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter. It is time for the truth to be brought out. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs, but through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. I urge immediate congressional action to reduce the dangers from secrecy about unidentified flying objects. The government is fully aware that these things exist. The question is, why aren't we? Why is it that they're trying to suppress this information? Well, I have a theory about that. And I don't think it's because they think we're not capable of understanding it or that it will cause a panic. I don't believe that in the least. I believe it's greed and power. That the truth is, if you look at the current structure of our world, it's built on the powerful owning all of our resources. If free energy was available to everyone, that would ruin the infrastructure of the rich and powerful. It would also take away a great deal of the fear mechanism that keeps our military-industrial complex roaring as much as it does. And so it makes more sense because fear is a great control, that they don't tell us what's available to us. It's just like back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, different people were coming up with carburetors that ran on water instead of gasoline and could go 100 miles. Right now today, there's a way you can use water combined with gas that you can go on YouTube and look at it yourself. You can do it yourself and get 100 miles to the gallon using this hookup. But it's not something our government or the oil industry is ever going to want you to know about because they don't want to lose money or power. And I believe that's what this is really all about. Having said that, why haven't they just come down and visited us in open and, hey, here we are? Well, think about it. We're here fighting over imaginary lines in the sand. And my God is not your God. And your language is bad, or your skin color is wrong, or the way you wear your clothing is incorrect, or who you love is wrong. We're not evolved enough to join them. I think that they monitor us. They treat us almost like animals that have the ability to become something, but we're not there yet. We're not evolved enough for them. And if anything, they should be more concerned about what we would do. I mean, look at Space Force. The United States Space Force. We're now militarizing outer space. Who are we going to fight in outer space? The truth is, if they wanted to, the technology that makes it capable for them to come here could easily wipe us out in less than a second. Totally. They could take whatever they wanted. So it would be insane to think we could ever fight them. But hundreds of officials have come out and have expressed their beliefs and shared their evidence. Government officials all around the world. And it's there for you to look into. I actually had one experience. I'm not a big UFO person. I've not had a lot of experiences. I've met people who've been abducted. I've met other people who have had other encounters. But my one personal encounter was with my son. We were at my parents' house, my mother and stepfather, and we were down in the living room. It was the middle of the night. We were sleeping down there because it was a hot night. And we were woken up by a bright light, so bright that it made the backyard look like daylight. At the time, I was severely handicapped, and I was using a wheelchair most of the time. I couldn't get around. But every minute or so, this bright light would explode in the backyard and light up everything, and then it would die down after about 10 or 15 seconds. And it did this for well over an hour. And the light was coming off, when you're looking at the backyard, it was coming off to the right-hand side in the swamp. someplace that no car was going to get. And we're talking about a light that was so bright that it was like those Hollywood premiere lights, those spotlights, like 2 or 3 of those going off in your backyard. Just blazing light. And there was no explanation for it. I did call MUFON, but I unfortunately called them 2 or 3 days later because I hadn't heard of them before that. And they said it was too late. There was nothing they could do. Any physical evidence would be gone by then. So they didn't investigate it, which is a shame. I'm not so sure that there wouldn't be nothing. There would be nothing there. Who knows? I mean, why on earth would there be light like that? But how do you suppose the aliens find us? Well, I have to believe that they are more spiritually developed than we are. Number one, they have to be cooperative enough that they were able to overcome their own internal squabbles, work together, and get out into the universe. And I've mentioned in the past that all life, has an aura around it. The Earth is a living, breathing organism. Could you imagine how bright the aura of the Earth is if you are a spiritually attuned person who can see auras? You know, the human eye can't see most wavelengths of light. Some psychics can see auras, but there's a type of shrimp that can see 16 different types of light that we can't even begin to imagine. I can't even imagine what the universe looks like to them. So these aliens looking out, they look out at the universe and we're like a supernova in the sky with that much life. And of course they're going to come and investigate. It draws them like a moth to the flame. But how do they get around the universe? That's actually a fascinating question, and it's something that I've looked into quite a bit. And you'll have to excuse me a moment. I've lost my... Oh, there we go. Okay. So nothing moves faster than the speed of light, right? Not true, actually. Tachyons move faster than light. They may even move backward through time. We're not sure about that yet. There was also a Mexican PhD student, he's now a scientist, who had come up with this idea that NASA is now developing that creates a field around your ship that allows you to sail on the expansion of the universe plus whatever propulsion you have, so you're literally going faster than the speed of light. There's also, of course, and I apologize, something's wrong with my iPad again. There's also the wormhole theory, and this actually interests me. If you take a piece of paper, and I apologize, I meant to get one and I don't have it, but you get a piece of paper, and you're going from point A to point B, point A to point B. All right, you have to travel that distance, right? Well, not if you fold point A toward point B, and then they're touching. If you think of the three-dimensional world as a two-dimensional world, in other words, like that piece of paper, something that's above our dimension could fold space. We know, there's a terrific quantum physicist you should check out, Michio Kaku. I believe he's at Princeton. He's so easy to understand. He has written wonderful books about quantum physics that will astound you. It'll blow your mind. And he has explained that there are at least 11 dimensions that exist, not the 3 dimensions that we think of, or 4 if you want to throw in time. But these dimensions are smaller than the smallest atom. They're all around us. They are in us. They are throughout us. And there's a problem in physics. You've got Newtonian physics, which is the physical world that we all know and interact with. And then there's quantum physics, which is the physics of the atomic and subatomic. And there's a gap between those two, where we cannot explain why things that happen in the subatomic level are not the same as things that happen at the Newtonian level or the physical level. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. All of us around, everything around you is only energy, held together by forces. But when you take those other dimensions, then these two theories fit together perfectly. And I believe that this is a tremendous explanation for the paranormal, for spirits, for the inhuman and human spirits that we deal with, as well as for aliens. Because aliens could go through these dimensions to get to us. They don't have to go through space. It's just different ideas that we have all come up with, scientists and researchers and people, that these ideas make a lot of sense to me. That's why I wanted to share them with you. Of course, in the paranormal world, we also have portals. And that's, to me, more evidence for this idea of alternate dimensions. I have a colleague, her name is Kathy Rogers, and she was doing an investigation in a home in Canada. And she was with her whole team. There were 6 or 7 of these people. She and another colleague went down in the basement, went into a bedroom, and sat in the dark waiting for something to happen because there had been quite a bit of activity. After about 30 minutes, and they could hear everybody walking upstairs and downstairs, and they heard footsteps come down the stairs of the basement. They saw the bedroom door open, and then it closed on it by itself. When they went back upstairs, everyone said, "Where have you been? We've been looking all over for you." He said, "We were down in the basement." "No, we were down in the basement. We looked for you. You weren't there." So they had slipped into another dimension. They had been right there. They saw the door open, but they couldn't be seen. And the other person couldn't be seen because they were out of sync with one another. It's similar actually to H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. The explanation for why he was invisible is because he was in the 4th dimension above the light waves, and the light waves passed beneath him, and so therefore he was invisible. Just interesting to me. Also, I have to point out that even though I've got these ideas and these theories, the truth is we're dealing with intelligences that are far beyond us, unbelievably more advanced than us. And their understanding of reality would be far greater than us. We're like cavemen, trying to understand how a Bic lighter works. You know what's interesting also is up until we started learning how to fly and the Industrial Revolution, there weren't nearly as many sightings. They started to pick up at that point, at the turn of the 20th century. And then when the atom bomb was being created, then we started seeing tons of UFOs. They show up all the time during military escalations, when there's tensions between countries. They show up at military bases. They're fascinated by that, and I think they're also there to make sure that we don't hurt ourselves. There was a famous incident, and there have been a number of them, and I'll share 2 of them with you, where the United States was shooting a nuclear warhead into space, to test it. And a UFO came. Here's the warhead. UFO came, and it shot a beam of light at it. Then it zipped around, shot a beam of light at it, another beam, and then underneath. And then the rocket tumbled out of the sky. It seems they don't want us to weaponize space, and they have every right to be concerned. We are too warlike. On another incident, and this was, I believe, around 1970, we had a faulty reading. And for some reason, the computers thought that the Soviet Union had just launched a nuclear strike against us. And we had 16 silos ready to launch. Now, these are not on a circuit, they're not connected, and yet a UFO appeared over each one of them, and every one of them shut down, saving us. I think they want to see us grow. They want to see us reach our potential and then join the community of the universe. But we've got to get there. We're not there yet. There's also, and this is, I don't know what to think about this one, but there are NASA officials who say that there is a base on the dark side of the moon, and that we have photographic evidence. I've seen the photographs. It is pretty compelling. They're geometric shapes. There's this, what looks like a radar disc, but unbelievably large, and certainly not a radar disc, whatever it is. But it's that same kind of disc shape, and it's on the dark side of the moon. Let me get into some of your questions before I finish up here. Patty Nielsen was asking, we could handle the truth, but look at how people acted when they first heard of the pandemic. How do you think those people would act if aliens came a-knocking? Well, it's the same thing with Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds broadcast. There's a good argument to be made that people panic. And as I've been saying again and again, we're just not evolved enough to deal with this yet. We're not ready. And Michaela Jones was saying, if you're drawn in negative blood, you know anything about that? Rh negative blood types. There is a theory that the Rh negative blood type is actually a remnant of alien DNA that's been left in some of us that shows that we've been tinkered with, that this is not natural to Earth. I am not a biologist, but the evidence that I've looked into says this is something that is very interesting and certainly worthwhile checking into. Connie Calder was asking, do you feel that many strange disappearances of people from our national parks are alien related? Unfortunately, no. No. The truth is, at any given time, we know there are 50 serial killers in the United States actively killing. We also know that they like places like reservations, Native American reservations, because there's so little protection there that this is hard, but a quarter of the women get raped. They disappear often. It's why people on the border disappear so easily. It's why people in state parks disappear so easily. That's my belief, based on the evidence of people who have been hurt. Excuse me. And Mary Christina Chappell Snipes, Admiral Byrd said he met with aliens too. Yeah, as I was saying, it's extraordinary how many people have come forward about this. And Admiral Byrd's a big one. Thank you, Wade. Wade Kirby asked me, do you think Jesus is known in the extraterrestrial worlds? You know what? Here's the thing. And I know I'll get in trouble with some people for this. I don't think that Jesus is the only Son of God. I think that Jesus came here to enlighten us. Jesus came here to teach us. Buddha did the same. Many holy people have done the same. These are enlightened souls. Jesus is undoubtedly special and has left a huge impact on the world. But on this world, I think God reveals himself everywhere, and that these beings have their own ways of touching God. Now, the thing is, there's a difference between spirituality and religion. Religion is somebody else teaching you a path to God. Spirituality is a connection that you have inside you with God. You don't need religion to have a spiritual connection with God. Religion can lead you there, but it's not necessary to get there. Lalulu was asking, so that show from the 80s V was kind of shedding light on this topic? I don't think they're out to hurt us. I mean, the reptilians, I have no proof that they exist. I don't know if they exist. Or if they're just a manifestation of our own fears. You know, the little green men, only these ones are giant and reptilian. Michelle Ann Tierney was asking, what are my thoughts on hybrids? Well, that gets back to the RH factor. And then the star seeds that people talk about. The idea that these are people that have alien DNA in them and are here to help us to spiritually elevate. God, I wish that was true. I don't know. I would love, if you've got information about that you'd like to share with me, I would love to look into that more. I really don't know yet. Andy Chalk was asked, is God an alien then? Well, yes, absolutely God's an alien. He's not from Earth. As a matter of fact, God's not from this dimension. God comes from outside the universe. The universe is his creation. So by definition, God's an alien. You know, they talk about how we're created in God's image. I don't for a second think that means physically. I think that has far more to do with the spark of divinity that we carry within us. That it's our soul. Regardless of whether or not you always incarnate here on Earth or perhaps on another planet. It doesn't matter. It's all about that journey of your soul to get closer and closer to God. I've never met anybody who has past life memories of a different world. It certainly is something I would love to find out about. I am a regression hypnotist. My grandfather taught me how to do that. But I've never come across anything like that. And my friend Rodrigo Garcia Ferreira was saying in Argentina, we have incredible places to spot. At Cerro, Uritorco in Cordoba in Patagonia. Even in the center of the country, sightings have increased and there are more and more mutilations of cattle. Well, I don't particularly want to see the mutilations, but I definitely want to see the other places. And if I can get out of Brazil, I will definitely make a point of getting there. The way things are going right now, I might be here for a very long time. What I find interesting are the crop circles. For instance, I'm not sure about the cattle mutilations. I don't know what to think about those. I don't, for some reason, believe that aliens have come to Earth to mutilate our cattle. Are they also here to make pretty patterns in our crops? Maybe not exactly. But remember what I said about how the paranormal manifests according to our beliefs, perhaps we hook into that alien energy, and between ourselves and the aliens, these patterns are left there as a communion. There's a famous experiment. It's a very simple experiment in physics. It's called the double slit experiment. And they shoot photons through the two slits. And when you do that, you should get a predictable pattern on the back wall from these two slits. They go through two slits here into another wall, and they measure that. Now here's the interesting thing. When they are actually looking or measuring this phenomena, it does form a predictable pattern. But when they don't measure it, when they only look at what happened to the wall behind it after the fact, it shows evidence of these things slipping into a different dimension. That it's actually going into two places at the same time. Why? Is it that observation changes reality? It's because by the way, when I say observation, it doesn't have to be human observation. It could be mechanical observation. But it does change reality. That's mind-blowing. That shows that something that we're doing is changing things. We're coming near the end of our time. A few more minutes left. And again, I want to ask you, please, to check out the rest of the Spirit Realm Network and their programs. And please, go to the Warren Legacy Foundation Facebook page, like there. Go to the Warren Files YouTube channel. There's well over 40, up maybe 50 videos now there for you to look through on every topic imaginable. And it gives us the opportunity, if you go out there and you share that channel, if you share the videos, it gives us the opportunity to reach more people and help them. That's all I truly care about. It's the only reason I do this is I reach out to you so that you can help me to reach out to people in trouble. There's something else I wanted to bring up to you, and that's just because something can be debunked, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. There was a famous fella, he used to follow my grandparents around. He was a professional skeptic named the Amazing Randy. He was a magician. And his belief was, if he could replicate it through stage magic, then it isn't real. Well, I've experienced things that maybe stage magic could replicate, but I can't replicate in a scientific realm, like for instance, being in a bed that flies across the room. Yeah, that's a one-off. But it happened. And there is nothing in Newtonian physics that could possibly explain that. Quantum physics, maybe. So, if you'd like to learn more about this topic, obviously YouTube has a plethora of information. And yes, you could go into things like the Chariots of the Gods, which sadly isn't the best source. The man faked a lot of it, and even the stuff that he got right, like the photographs and so forth, he added stuff that wasn't true. So don't go there. Michio Kaku, definitely somebody you want to check out. Nikola Tesla, definitely worth checking out. There is an amazing documentary on Netflix you should definitely check out. It's called Unacknowledged. And I did take some of that information and shared it with you tonight. That it will blow your mind. It's about an hour and a half long, and the evidence is overwhelming and worth your time. I believe, and I know that the truth is out there. If you don't have any other questions, and I'm guessing we don't have any more, then I just want to say thank you again. I'll be back here next week. Stay tuned. The Secret of the Golden Runes is on. There's a live investigation a little later on this evening, and I'm sure you'll have a good time. Take care, my friends, and from the Warren Files, I'll see you next week.